The scrapyard was quiet, except for the occasional clang of metal against metal and the hiss of air tools that Jarek used every day. Rusted starship parts and broken droids were piled everywhere, forming a chaotic landscape that only someone like him could navigate. He wiped sweat and grease from his brow, leaning back against a half-dismantled hovercar and letting himself breathe. This was his world, a place where humans could make sense of things the rest of the galaxy ignored. Most didn't care about a tiny scrap station tucked between the outer colonies, but for Jarek, it was a kingdom, and he ruled it with skill and stubborn pride. He had just finished rewiring a grav lift when a sudden movement at the edge of the yard caught his attention. A figure limped into view, moving carefully over the uneven piles of metal. At first, he thought it was just another scavenger looking for parts, but the way she carried herself stopped him cold. Every step, every motion radiated purpose and quiet strength. Her armor was battered and scratched, the marks of battle evident across its surface. But she moved with precision, a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Jarek leaned on his workbench and studied her as she approached. "Need something fixed?" he called out casually, not expecting much. Most visitors here didn't last long in conversation. The scrapyard wasn't kind to strangers. She stopped a few feet away, the weight of her armor making her movements deliberate. Her voice was calm, but firm. "Can you repair this?" she asked, holding out her gauntleted hands. The armor looked old, some of the plating dented and scorched. Jarek squinted at it, then shrugged. "Sure, I can make it good as new, but it'll take a few hours. Don't expect miracles if it's been through a war." He had seen worse, and honestly, he liked a challenge. She nodded and stepped back, letting him take the armor. As he examined the plates, he realized the craftsmanship was exceptional. These weren't just mass-produced pieces. Each segment was engineered for precision, strength, and agility. Someone had poured skill into making this armor, someone who knew what survival really demanded. Hours passed in a blur of sparks, oil, and the smell of burning circuits. Jarek worked tirelessly, replacing circuits, patching scratches, and adjusting the servos to make sure the joints moved freely. He didn't notice her watching from the edge of the yard at first. When he finally finished, he held up the fully repaired armor, its surface gleaming under the harsh lights of the scrapyard. "Here you go," he said, wiping his hands. "Good as new. You should be able to move faster, and the plating will hold against most hits." She stepped forward and examined the armor, running her fingers over the smooth surfaces, flexing the joints, testing the weight. She nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. There was something in her tone that made Jarek pause. It wasn't just gratitude, it was respect. Quiet and deliberate, like she recognized the value of what he had done. He smiled modestly. "No problem, it's just a suit of armor." "I fix them all the time." But as he turned to put away his tools, he noticed movement behind her. At first, it was subtle, just a shadow among the scrap piles. Then more shadows appeared, forming a line behind her. Jarek froze. One by one, soldiers stepped forward, their armor pristine and their posture disciplined. They kneeled, all of them. The sight left him speechless. He had repaired a lot of things in his life, but never had an entire group of armed soldiers knelt before him. Their helmets reflected the dim light, their weapons resting on the ground in silent respect. The air felt heavy, charged with something more than electricity, something like awe, like the quiet recognition of a human's unexpected worth. What is this?" he asked, his voice uncertain. The woman turned, lifting her helmet. Her face was calm, her expression unreadable. But her eyes were sharp, assessing, almost piercing. Jarek had seen fear in the eyes of many people, even terror. But this was different. This was authority, quiet and absolute. She studied him as if weighing the importance of every word he might say. "You've done more than repair armor," she said, her voice steady, deliberate. "You've preserved a symbol that many thought would be lost forever." Jarek blinked. I I don't understand.
It's just metal and circuits. Anyone could do this.
She shook her head slightly, as if correcting a child. Not anyone. You are human, and that makes the difference. Her words confused him. Humans were always underestimated, overlooked by alien races who thought their technology and discipline were superior. Jarek had lived his entire life in that shadow, quietly proud of the skills he had honed while others dismissed his species, yet hearing it acknowledged by someone of her stature, someone clearly more experienced than he could ever hope to be, made his chest tighten with something he didn't fully recognize. Pride? Fear. Respect. Maybe all three. The soldiers behind her remained kneeling, their helmets reflecting a silent message. They weren't just showing her respect. They were showing respect to him as well. Jarek's mind raced. Who were these people? Why would an entire squad, an entire military unit, kneel before a stranger who had only fixed a piece of metal? Before he could ask, she stepped closer, removing her helmet entirely. Her hair was tied back, practical and unadorned, and her eyes held the calm precision of someone who had survived countless battles. This armor, she said, is more than protection. It carries authority, history, and the weight of hope. Without it, I would not have survived the first wave of the invasion. Jarek's hands, which had been resting at his sides, went cold. The first wave? Invasion? He had heard rumors of skirmishes in the outer colonies, but he never imagined he was now involved in something of that magnitude. His fingers itched to reach out, to touch the armor again, but he knew better. This was not just a machine. It was a symbol, and symbols demanded respect. I just repaired it, he stammered. I didn't know. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. And yet you did. Sometimes it is the smallest acts that carry the heaviest consequences. Jarek wanted to say something. Anything, but words failed him. Instead, he looked around at the kneeling soldiers, their disciplined ranks forming an unbroken line that seemed to stretch beyond the edge of the scrapyard. He realized that what he had done, what he had thought of as simple work, was part of something far larger than himself. Somehow, in his hands, a human spark had preserved hope for an entire fleet, a force he had never even met. The woman finally turned to leave. Prepare yourself, she said over her shoulder. The journey is long, and we may need your expertise again sooner than you think. Jarek watched her go, feeling a strange mix of pride and disbelief. For years, humans were underestimated. They were overlooked, dismissed, counted out before they were even given a chance. And yet here he was, a small-time mechanic from a forgotten colony, standing in the presence of someone who trusted the survival of her people to the skills of a human hand. As he cleaned his tools and stared at the empty scrapyard where she had stood, he realized something profound. Humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because their resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability could not be predicted. And sometimes, that unpredictability became their greatest weapon. Hours passed, and the sun, or what passed for a sun in the outer sector, sank low in the sky, casting long shadows over the piles of scrap. Jarek could still feel the weight of what had just happened, the quiet reverence of soldiers who had knelt before him. He didn't understand it fully, and perhaps he never would. But one thing was certain. The galaxy was about to see what humans were capable of, and he, by a small twist of fate and grease-stained hands, had already played a part in it. By nightfall, the scrapyard returned to its usual silence. Sparks from old welding torches flickered faintly in the distance, and the distant hum of starships passing overhead reminded Jarek that life and danger went on beyond his small corner of the galaxy. And somewhere out there, the woman and her fleet were counting on humans like him, ordinary people with extraordinary potential, to make the impossible happen. For the first time in his life, Jarek felt the weight of being more than ordinary. Jarek couldn't sleep that night. The scrapyard was quiet, but his mind raced. He kept thinking about her, the woman who had appeared like a storm, commanding soldiers, and yet treating him with a respect he had never known before. His hands itched as if they had already done more than repair armor. They had, somehow, shaped fate. By the time the first light of the next day reached the edges of the scrapyard, a sleek shuttle had landed outside. The hum of its engines was low, almost polite, but Jarek felt it in his chest. The woman stepped out, her armor gleaming under the rising sun, and motioned for him to follow. "You're coming with me," she said simply. What? Why?" Jarek asked, fumbling with his tools. "Because the fleet needs someone who thinks differently," she replied, her eyes scanning the scrapyard as if seeing threats no one else could. "You fix things that others cannot, and sometimes that is exactly what determines victory." He hesitated. He had spent his life in this small station, repairing old ships and discarded tech. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. And yet, the way she looked at him made it clear he had no choice. His hands, calloused from years of work, had earned a place on a battlefield he had never imagined. Inside the shuttle, Jarek was amazed. It was a small craft, but perfectly engineered, with touch-sensitive panels and consoles displaying star charts and fleet positions. Alien symbols flickered across the screens, but the technology was surprisingly human-friendly. She sat across from him, lifting her helmet again. Her face was calm, but her eyes told him she had seen horrors he could not yet imagine. "I am Commander Lyra," she said, "and you, human, are part of my crew now." Jarek blinked. "Commander Lyra? You're the fleet commander? The one everyone talks about?" She nodded.
The same. And right now we are on the edge of disaster.
"My fleet is outnumbered. Our supplies are low. We need ingenuity more than brute force, and humans have a particular way of solving impossible problems." He swallowed hard. The weight of her words settled on him. Humans were always underestimated, yes, but here was a chance to prove that underestimation was the galaxy's biggest mistake. The shuttle landed on a massive warship, its hull reflecting the dim light of distant stars. Jarek followed Lyra through corridors that hummed with energy, soldiers and technicians moving efficiently around them. Everyone seemed focused, disciplined, yet there was an underlying tension he could almost touch. "Where do I fit in?" he asked finally.
"You will fix what breaks," Lyra said simply. "Weapons, engines, shields."
"You will do what others cannot. And, when the time comes, you will find solutions in moments when most would panic." Jarek nodded, a mixture of fear and excitement stirring inside him. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Over the next few days, Jarek proved his worth quickly. A minor weapons malfunction threatened one of the fleet's key defensive systems. The engineers were stumped, unable to isolate the problem. Jarek approached the console, running his fingers over panels, tracing circuits, and recalibrating components with an intuitive skill that surprised even him. Within hours, the system hummed back to life. Lyra observed quietly, her expression unreadable, but he could see a faint nod of approval. His days became a whirlwind of repairs and modifications. He rewired damaged engines, adjusted shields for better efficiency, and even improved targeting systems that had been overlooked. Every time he solved a problem, he noticed the subtle shift in how the crew interacted with him. Respect replaced curiosity, and sometimes awe. Humans, they realized, had an adaptability no machine could replicate, no alien training could teach. Then came the ambush. The fleet was moving through an asteroid field on the outskirts of colonized space when enemy ships appeared, far more numerous than expected. Red sensors flashed across the bridge, and alarms blared as warning sirens filled the corridors. Lyra's calm voice cut through the chaos. "All stations, report! Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Prioritize shields and protect the civilian transports." Jarek ran to a control panel, quickly analyzing the damage reports. "Shields in Sector 4 are failing," he shouted. "We need to reroute power now or we'll lose the rear fleet." An officer looked at him with surprise. "Do you know what you're doing?" "I think I do," Jarek replied, his fingers flying over controls. He rerouted power, bypassed damaged circuits, and stabilized the shield in a way that even the engineers had not considered. The failing sector hummed back to life, glowing with renewed energy, and for a moment, he allowed himself a tiny smile. Lyra watched silently, but Jarek caught the briefest flicker of admiration in her eyes. "Well done," she said, just above the roar of the alarms. The enemy was relentless, their ships faster and more numerous. But Jarek's human intuition became the difference between disaster and survival. He suggested unpredictable maneuvers, exploiting asteroid clusters to hide the fleet and create ambush points of their own. Engineers modified the weapons under his guidance, using unconventional angles and timing that no traditional strategy would suggest. The tide slowly turned. Enemy vessels collided with asteroids, their formations broken. Lyra's fleet, once overwhelmed, now pressed forward, gaining ground they should never have had. Jarek moved from station to station, patching systems and guiding crews with calm authority, despite his own fear. Every solution he offered was a small rebellion against the odds, a human spark in the vast machinery of war. At the end of the battle, the enemy ships retreated, battered and broken. The fleet, though damaged, had survived. Soldiers looked to each other, then to Jarek, their respect evident in ways that went beyond words. Lyra approached him quietly on the bridge, her face serious, yet not without pride. "You have changed the outcome today," she said. "What you did, no one else could have." Jarek shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward under her gaze. "I just fixed what was broken," he said. "No," Lyra said firmly. "You adapted, you innovated, and you made a difference when it mattered most. Humans often underestimate themselves. I have seen it for years, but today you proved exactly why the galaxy cannot ignore your kind." For the first time, Jarek felt truly seen. The galaxy had always dismissed humans as weak or inconsequential, yet here he was, making life-or-death decisions in the heat of a battle that had no margin for error. His ingenuity, something he had always thought of as simple problem-solving, had become a weapon, a force that could shape the fate of entire fleets. The days that followed were a mix of repairs, strategy meetings, and preparation for the next inevitable battle. Jarek learned more than he had ever imagined about alien technology, advanced weapons systems, and fleet logistics. Yet even as he grew more skilled, he realized it was more than knowledge that mattered. It was his human instinct, his ability to improvise, to see patterns others missed, to find solutions where none existed. Lyra observed quietly, often standing in silence as he worked. Sometimes she spoke, offering advice, occasionally testing him with problems she knew were unsolvable without human ingenuity. And every time, Jarek rose to the challenge, his confidence growing alongside the crew's respect for his abilities. One night, while the fleet traveled through a nebula to evade detection, Lyra approached him in the maintenance bay. The hum of machinery surrounded them, a soothing rhythm after the chaos of battle. "You understand now," she said quietly, "why humans are both underestimated and feared." Jarek nodded slowly. I think I do. It's not our strength or our technology. It's how we adapt, how we survive. How we turn the smallest advantage into something the universe cannot predict." She smiled faintly. "Exactly. And never forget that, Jarek. You are not just a mechanic. You are proof that humans can change the outcome when all else seems lost. That is why I trust you, and why my fleet listens to you, even when they do not fully understand your methods." Jarek felt the weight of her words settle on him. For the first time, he truly understood his place, not just as a mechanic, but as a human in a galaxy that had long underestimated his species. His hands had fixed more than machines. They had fixed hope itself, rekindling a spark that others might have thought lost. As he looked out at the stars beyond the hull, Jarek realized that the journey had only just begun. The battles ahead would be harder, the stakes higher, but for the first time he felt prepared. Not because of technology, not because of training, but because of something uniquely human: ingenuity, courage, and the relentless drive to survive and protect those who could not do so alone. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that humans, once underestimated, could shape the galaxy in ways even the most advanced civilizations could not predict. The fleet had barely recovered from the ambush in the asteroid field when new intelligence arrived. Scouts reported that the enemy was preparing a massive strike at the outer colonies, intending to wipe out everything humans had built in this sector. Lyra's face remained calm as she reviewed the reports, but Jarek could see the tension behind her eyes. This was not a small skirmish. This was a full-scale assault, and the odds were stacked against them. "Jarek," Lyra said, calling him to the bridge, "we need a strategy that no one would expect. Our ships are outnumbered, and our weapons are limited. I need ideas." He walked up to the tactical console, his fingers hovering over the panels as he studied the enemy fleet's movements. He had seen patterns before, but this was different. The enemy was relentless, their ships moving with precision that suggested years of training. But there was something predictable about their tactics, something a human mind could exploit. "We don't fight them head-on," Jarek said, pointing at the holographic display. "We make them think we're retreating, split the fleet into smaller units, use the asteroid clusters as cover, and strike where they least expect. They rely too much on formation. Chaos will be our weapon." Lyra's eyes lit up. Unconventional. "Exactly what we need. Prepare the plans for distribution to the fleet." Over the next hours, the crew worked tirelessly, implementing Jarek's ideas. Engineers recalibrated weapons to fire in bursts that could hit multiple targets at odd angles. Pilots practiced evasive maneuvers through the asteroid clusters. Sensors were adjusted to detect ambush points that only someone with Jarek's intuition could see. Every member of the fleet moved with a single purpose: survival, guided by human ingenuity. The enemy arrived at the edge of the outer colonies just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the planets below. Their ships were vast, bristling with weapons and shielded by advanced technology. Many species in the fleet had panicked at the sight, but the humans, guided by Jarek's strategies, remained calm. Lyra's voice echoed across the fleet. "Execute Jarek's plan! Trust in their human intuition and act with precision. Do not underestimate them." The first strike came suddenly. Enemy ships fired, tearing through unprepared sectors of the colony's defenses. Explosions lit up space, and alarms blared across the fleet. But the humans moved as predicted, darting through asteroid clusters and disappearing from enemy sensors. The aliens fired blindly, wasting precious energy, while Lyra's fleet slipped through the chaos. Positioning themselves for a counterattack, Jarek moved from station to station, patching shields that flickered, rerouting power to failing engines, and adjusting weapon arrays on the fly. Every decision was critical. Every moment could decide the fate of thousands of lives. His hands flew over the controls with a confidence born of years of problem-solving, but now applied on a scale that could tip the balance of an entire battle. Then came the turning point. The enemy flagship, larger than any vessel in Lyra's fleet, emerged from behind a gas cloud, weapons charged and aimed directly at the colony's capital station. A wave of panic rippled through the crew. Lyra turned to Jarek. "We can't outrun it. We can't overpower it. You need to find a way to stop it." Jarek studied the schematics quickly. "We don't destroy it. We confuse it. If we can hack into their targeting system, even briefly, we can mislead their weapons into firing at the asteroids, not the station. I can do it, but I'll need direct access to their sensor relay."
Lyra nodded. "I'll get you there. Lead the team."
"Trust yourself, human." The operation was tense. Jarek, accompanied by a small strike team, maneuvered a shuttle close to the enemy flagship under the cover of darkness. Alien patrols scanned the area, but Jarek's improvisation allowed them to slip past detection. Every moment felt like walking a knife's edge. One mistake and the mission would fail. Inside the shuttle, Jarek worked quickly, connecting his tools to the relay systems. Alien technology was complex, designed to resist hacking, but he relied on human intuition and ingenuity rather than brute force. Circuits were rerouted, codes bypassed, and in moments the enemy targeting system began to falter. Back on the fleet, the enemy weapons fired, then exploded harmlessly against asteroid clusters. The capital station remained intact. Lyra's ships pressed the attack, exploiting the confusion to strike with precision. One by one, enemy ships were disabled or forced to retreat. As the battle raged, Jarek realized that humans were not just part of the fleet. They were the deciding factor. Every creative solution, every improvisation, every small act of ingenuity was tipping the scales. Alien commanders who had underestimated humans for centuries were now witnessing the consequences of that error. Hours later, the battlefield was quiet. The enemy had retreated, leaving their dead and disabled ships behind. Lyra's fleet had survived, battered but victorious. Crew members cheered, but Jarek felt no elation. The victory was not hers alone, not his alone. It was the culmination of human adaptability applied at the right moment. Lyra approached him on the deck of her flagship, her expression unreadable, yet softening.
"You did it," she said. "Not through strength, not through numbers, but through thought,
through human thinking. You have reminded the galaxy why humans are dangerous when underestimated." Jarek shook his head, exhausted but proud. "I just did what seemed right. Others might have done it differently." "No," Lyra said firmly. "No one else would have done it. Not with the speed, the creativity, the clarity you did. You embody what humans are capable of, unpredictable, inventive, and relentless." In the days that followed, the fleet regrouped and repaired. Stories of human ingenuity spread quickly among the crews, inspiring admiration and respect from aliens and humans alike. Jarek became more than a mechanic. He became a symbol of hope, proof that the underestimated human spark could overcome even the greatest challenges. Even Lyra's own soldiers, who had knelt before him in the scrapyard, now looked to him for guidance, not because he commanded them, but because his ideas worked. Humans, thought to be weak, were now the turning point in a war that had seemed hopeless. One night, Jarek sat in the observation deck, staring at the stars. Lyra joined him quietly, standing beside him as he contemplated the vastness of space. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "Humans have always been underestimated, yet your kind survives, adapts, and thrives. Your ingenuity is a weapon more powerful than any ship or fleet." Jarek nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. "I think I understand. It's not just about fixing things. It's about seeing what others can't, doing what others won't, and trusting yourself even when the odds seem impossible." She smiled faintly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Exactly. And that is why you will be at my side in the battles to come. You are proof that humans, even the smallest among them, can turn the tide of war." Jarek looked out at the stars again, feeling a deep sense of purpose. He had started as a simple mechanic, overlooked and underestimated. But now he was part of something far larger than himself, a human spark that could change the course of history. In the coming days, the fleet would face even greater threats, but Jarek knew one thing. As long as humans were underestimated, as long as their creativity and courage were ignored, they would always have the power to surprise the galaxy. And sometimes, that surprise was the difference between life and death, victory and defeat. The stars stretched endlessly before him, a canvas for battles yet to come. And Jarek, with his hands dirty from repairs and his mind racing with possibilities, knew that humanity had already begun to leave its mark. The galaxy had underestimated humans once again. But this time, The consequence would be written in the debris of defeated fleets and the astonished eyes of those who thought humans were ordinary. And Jarek, the human mechanic from a forgotten scrapyard, had become the spark that reminded everyone why humans could never be ignored. The fleet drifted through the void. Repairs ongoing and crews exhausted, but the tension remained. The enemy was not finished, and Jarek could feel it in the hum of the engines, in the quiet mutters of anxious crew members. Lyra stood on the bridge, calm and steady, but her eyes betrayed a hint of concern. She had seen countless battles, countless lives lost, but this war was different. Humans were underestimated, and that underestimation had given her fleet an advantage, but it also meant the enemy would not relent. Jarek moved through the corridors, checking systems and consulting with engineers. Every ship in the fleet relied on the ingenuity of the humans he guided, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had never imagined that his skills honed in a tiny scrapyard would be pivotal in interstellar war. And yet here he was, a human among countless alien species, making the difference between survival and annihilation. "Jarek," Lyra called from the bridge, "we have confirmation. The enemy's flagship is heading for the colony's main supply station. If they destroy it, the outer colonies fall. You need to get aboard their ship again." His heart raced. He had done this before, hacking their systems to mislead weapons and protect the fleet, but this was different. This time, the stakes were higher. Lives of millions depended on him. "I'll do it," he said, gripping his toolkit tightly. "I just need a small team." Lyra nodded. "Take who you need." "The fleet will provide cover, but remember, this is not just about fixing things. You need to outthink them, human. That is what they will never anticipate." Jarek's shuttle sliced through space, approaching the enemy flagship under the cover of debris clouds. Alien patrols scanned the area, but Jarek's calculations allowed them to slip by unseen. Every second felt stretched, each movement calculated. His hands worked instinctively, connecting circuits, bypassing security locks, and feeding false signals into the enemy network. Inside the flagship, he and his team moved through corridors lined with unfamiliar technology, alien symbols glowing faintly along the walls. Sensors detected their presence, but the patterns Jarek had studied allowed them to avoid detection. Every step, every action was a dance of human ingenuity against alien precision. Finally, he reached the central control room. The enemy commanders had prepared for almost everything, but not for humans who could improvise, adapt, and act unpredictably. Jarek connected to the control systems, rerouting their weapons to fire at empty space, then feeding false navigation commands to the flagship itself. The enemy ships moved in confusion, crashing into asteroids or spinning out of control. Back on the fleet, Lyra watched the chaos unfold with quiet satisfaction. The enemy's lines faltered, their formations breaking under the pressure of unexpected tactics. Jarek's actions had shifted the battle completely. Ships that had been doomed moments ago now had a chance. Soldiers who had feared the worst now rallied, inspired by the audacity and creativity of a human who refused to yield. Hours passed as the battle raged. Jarek's small team worked tirelessly, patching damaged systems on both their shuttle and the enemy flagship. Each problem he solved, each improvisation he made, further destabilized the enemy. His human instinct, seeing patterns, predicting movements, finding solutions where none seemed possible, was now the critical advantage for the fleet. Finally, the enemy flagship was disabled, its weapons offline, its command systems in disarray. The remaining enemy ships, leaderless and confused, began a slow retreat. The outer colonies were safe, for now, but the victory was not just military. It was a demonstration of human capability, a reminder to the galaxy that humans could not be underestimated. When Jarek returned to Lyra's flagship, he was greeted with cheers from the crew. Engineers, soldiers, and pilots alike recognized his contribution. Lyra herself approached, her expression proud, her eyes reflecting both relief and admiration. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have proven that humans, even the smallest among them, can change the outcome of war. The galaxy will remember this day." Jarek shook his head, exhausted, but proud. "I just did what I could. I didn't expect anything more."
"No," Lyra said firmly. "You have done exactly what others could not."
"You have shown that human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability are forces the universe cannot ignore. Today, humans are no longer underestimated. They are respected, and perhaps feared, by those who once dismissed them." As the fleet repaired and regrouped, Jarek walked through the corridors, observing soldiers from different species. Many approached him with nods of respect, others with quiet gratitude. He realized that he was no longer just a mechanic. He had become a symbol, proof that a single human with skill and determination could shape the destiny of many. Lyra called him to the observation deck, where the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. "Do you see this?" she asked. "All of this, the fleet, the colonies, the lives saved, it is because humans like you refuse to be predictable. You do what others cannot, see what others miss, and act when others hesitate." Jarek looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of her words. He had started as an ordinary mechanic, someone dismissed and overlooked. Now he understood that being human meant more than he had ever imagined. Creativity, courage, adaptability. These were weapons just as powerful as lasers, shields, or fleets. "Humans have always survived," he said quietly, "even when the odds were against us." Lyra nodded, and now the galaxy knows it too. The coming weeks saw humans across the fleet taking on larger roles. Jarek trained other humans to think the way he did, to improvise solutions, and to trust in their own abilities. Alien crew members began consulting them for advice, realizing that human thinking often produced results no amount of technology or training could replicate. In the end, the battle for the outer colonies became a legend, not because of weapons or numbers, but because of human determination and ingenuity. Jarek returned to the scrapyard when the campaign was over, but he was no longer the same man. He carried with him the knowledge that even the smallest, most underestimated humans could leave an indelible mark on the galaxy. And Lyra, once just a commander with a damaged suit of armor, had become an ally who recognized the true strength of humanity. She had trusted him, relied on him, and in doing so, changed the way the galaxy viewed his species. As Jarek stood among the piles of metal and old starship parts, he realized that the galaxy would never again dismiss humans as ordinary. From a simple act of fixing armor to saving entire fleets, humans had proven that their ingenuity and courage were forces to be reckoned with. The stars stretched endlessly above him, silent witnesses to the power of human potential. Jarek smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, and now they would have to respect them. The kneeling soldiers, the grateful colonies, the astonished alien fleets. They had all learned the same lesson. Humans were not to be ignored. Dialogue, humans survived, humans adapted, and sometimes humans changed the course of history. Jarek looked at the stars, hands still stained with grease and oil, and whispered to himself, "We are not just survivors. We are the spark the galaxy cannot extinguish." And somewhere deep in space, far beyond the outer colonies, the galaxy began to take notice.